jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's the jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
So I'm here with a very special episode, and since most of us all wanted to do an exclusive on the gem that is Blade Runner, and we all had just crazy schedules, I thought I'd just get us into various segments. So I'm your host, Cam Soley, and movie buff podcaster David Gherman is here on the show, everybody.
Hey, what's up?
And so, yeah, just branching out into Blade Runner, it's kind of wild how it's a cyberpunk classic, a sci-fi classic, a futuristic western, and one of Harrison Ford and Rutger Hauer's best action outings. Just by far.
It's also a noir detective story.
Absolutely. It's in a way...
Especially with the voiceover, which I know is a point of contention with fans, the whole voiceover and not voiceover thing.
You know, that's a good topic to begin on. So, basically, this movie, as for those who haven't seen it, and I'll avoid spoilers, I'm just talking about the general kind of themes.
I think the statute of limitations on spoilers on this film is passed.
Well, that's true, too. I just figure, for those who've seen it and don't get it, I think you should just still try to just rewatch it. Watch it with a bunch of film buffs. Those who have loved it, you know why you love it. And I know you can describe it better than anybody. Those who are just now getting into it or introducing someone to it, you gotta have some other directory or reference. But I think that's the beauty of this movie. It really doesn't take much reference. You pretty much get the nuance of special. It dazzles, it captures your imagination, it's eye-catching without being just, oh, that's just a bunch of gratuitous visual effects shots, you know. What's your take to this? Like, did you see this?
I have a confession to make. I'm ashamed to admit, the first time I saw this movie, I can't remember when it was first. I didn't see it in theaters. It was when it was first available on cable back then, HBO or whatever we had for cable back then.
Uh-huh.
And I have to admit, I hated it the first time I saw it. It was just not what I was expecting. It was not what I was in the mood for. You know, E.T. had come out. I was still on a Star Wars high. Close Encounters had come out. I was expecting more along those lines. I wasn't ready for this more slow, dark, noirish, you know, a lot of talking. And I felt terrible. And so I finally revisited it a few years later and absolutely fell in love with it. But the first time I watched it, I remember thinking, well, this movie sucks. And I'm ashamed to admit it, but it's only because it's not the headspace I was in when I sat down and watched it. I was expecting something much more action-y, much more lighthearted. This movie, you have to really pay attention to this film. There's a lot going on in this film.
You know, that's wild that you bring it up, because it is definitely one of those... I don't know why. I was definitely the worst at, you know, if a movie was just dragging, I would almost always just hate it. And this one, you know, it was slow. And even without just the Harrison Ford portion, I don't know why. This movie made me fall in love with detective movies. Don't get me wrong. I'd seen parts of, you know, 40s noir stuff, but, you know, even on TCM, you know, that's a real big time suck and would often be, you know, in the middle of the day when I had to turn the TV off and, you know, go out and play. So, you know, this movie, I was fortunate enough. They had the final cut airing on Sci-Fi Channel to coincide with the DVD and Blu-ray release around 09-ish. And I don't know why. I just was used to just anything sci-fi or fantasy or just light horror. I was gonna seek out because I just wanted to see what gyms everyone was talking about. What are all these giant posters that you see at the video store? You know, are these really the classics? Are these really the gyms that they're meant to be? And I don't know. I just you see its influence in virtually every other movie. You know, even Star Wars prequels, just any other place that just has a futuristic city and, like you say, a futuristic detective and just any kind of cyborg android stuff. I mean, even Data on Star Trek, for instance. So, you know, you have all these themes, all this material, and it just kind of paints an unusual portrait without feeling like just a very forced homage or anything, or like you need some other material to go on just to understand it. So,
and it's an early, at least from my experience, it's an early example of what started sort of with Alien, where the future suddenly wasn't so shiny and clean. It seemed like all the sci-fi earlier than Alien, the future was perfect. We'd solved all the Earth's problems. Everybody, like in 2001, everything's spotless. This movie was very grimy and very wet, and he always looks uncomfortable. And I think Alien, I mean, I'm sure there's examples before Alien, but I think Alien's the first film that I remember where it showed the future as being, you know, much like now, dirty and unclean, and we still have lots of problems. Just now we have spaceships too, you know.
that's the best way to put it, because I mean, there's never a moment where you're just in doubt of what it's saying, of what it's depicting. So I guess really the main breaker is if you buy the mystery or you have trouble following it, or if you're in part of one of those pretentious arguments about what the screenwriter says is canon versus what director Ridley Scott says is canon.
That's exactly what I ran into doing the reading today for this. You go down these rabbit holes of, you know, does the origami unicorn mean this? It's like, you know, at the end of the day, I really don't care. I just want to be told a good story. I don't personally care if Decker was a replicant or not. I personally, I don't think he was, but I haven't delved as deeply. And like you said, some of these more pretentious discussions just go into every nook and cranny. It's like, my God, you know.
Yeah, and they're
it's just a movie. You know?
exactly.
It's a classic, but it's just an entertainment. I mean, people go down these, get lost down these rabbit holes of just overanalyzing every little scrap. And
yeah,
know,
dude.
The origami unicorn is a big thing for me. It's like, okay, maybe it's just ambiguous. It doesn't.
I always got an ambiguous kind of thing, and it definitely worked better in this movie than it did in Legend, also by Ridley Scott for me, because, you know, there's the unicorn in that one, and it was such a key yet such a brief part of the whole thing. And with this, I was just like, it was just kind of like, for me, like a Dubs and a John Woo movie. I was just like, okay, well, it's just its signature style. It's going to take multiple viewings to get that. Just leave it. Just.
I think I like this film better if Decker's not a replicant. I think it cheapens the end. If he's a replicant, then the final battle between him and Roy Batty just becomes two replicants fighting. It's not man versus machine or past versus future. It's just two robots fighting it out.
Exactly.
I prefer him not being replicant. Where in the sequel, I think it's brilliant. Are we doing spoilers or not?
You know what? Fuck it.
I don't want to do spoilers.
Okay, well, long story short.
The statute of limitations on the sequel hasn't passed yet, so I don't want to give that one away. But,
well, to be fair, it's funny you bring that up, because I noticed so many people, when the sequel came out, they weren't even bothering to see the original movie. It was stupid. They were going in, they were expecting to get it. They just saw this recap video that was trending on all the social media. And I kid you not, I saw friends go into it. They're like, oh, I thought it's going to be all like Terminator or Matrix. And it's like,
right.
well...
yeah, which is what I went through with the first one. So they were silly not to watch the first one. It's a very long movie. I have a hard time watching it in one sitting. It's like, damn, I got to go to bed. It's a long movie, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot going on. Some great performances in that sequel. I think the performances, particularly the actors, I have it here in front of me, who plays the replicant, the one who turned out to be bad. Liv or Love? What is her name? I got it right here in front of me. I can't think of her. I can't think of that character. She's one of the best villains I've seen in any movie in a long time.
Yes,
I whacks that morgue worker in the back of the head. Oh, that scene is hard to watch, man. She gives him that little karate chop to the back of the neck, and he just, yeah, she plays a great villain.
Yeah, she definitely never came off as a superhero type villain, and I know Jared Leto's not the most popular actor nowadays for both personal and just as an actor. But yeah, here I thought he really worked very well as one of the evil cyborgs. He's just very manipulative, very just his eyes pretty much sell the scene for me. And I mean, there's apparently some shorts on the Blu-ray that I haven't watched yet that were released on the internet originally, and those are also kind of fun, complimentary. And I mean, it also ends in a way where it left it open for a third part, but also to where, for now, if it doesn't continue, the story's still complete. And I wish more movies would end that way. Keep it open, but don't end with a, to be continued, sticker or something like that,
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time.
Ah.
Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We might talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Ah, yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ.
Ah.
We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair to say
Ah. Ah.
all
Ah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Yeah. don't run the listeners away, PJ.
Ah, I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we're gonna end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, Say hello to your little friend. For me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen, and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was going to be a rough
How could you watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our queue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-liner plot holes and gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
We now continue with our program.
Don't be like James Bond, like so and so will return in the sequel that never gets made.
I'm watching. I have the original, the final cut version playing right now as we're talking. And I'm just always struck by Joe Turkel's the actor who played Tyrell. The size of his eyeglasses. Good Lord, those are huge eyeglasses.
Yes.
In the future, people wear big ass eyeglasses.
Big ass eyeglasses. And I mean, just having all the various just dark corners, just every room just having such splendid art direction. It really did just show you, it's like, okay, sci-fi doesn't have to be just, green screen and that's it. It's like, sometimes it can be all this other stuff that you stage and you create the world.
The hellish production, apparently Ridley Scott was quite the perfectionist on this, demanding reshoots over reshoots and just exhausting everybody on the set.
Yeah, and I think that's why he's just lasted so long. While he doesn't know how to always tell a story, he knows how to envision a world and get all the shots that inject emotion and complement all the other stuff, all the other scenery, all the music, all the editing, and that's just it. And I think, going back to some of his more recent stuff, I mean, I think the reason I come back to other stuff like The Martian or Gladiator is also just because he will always have a very cool shot with the hero or anti-hero, and I instantly, in a way, want to know more about him because of the way they're walking and talking, and it's like, that's perfect. That, you created interest without even having to have just the actor start off the show first,
Yeah, his filmography is just rich with great movies. There's so many in his resume that are just fantastic watches. Yeah,
Exactly.
Gladiators, but I'll Alien he'll always be. I'll always give him the benefit of the doubt just because he gave us Alien.
There's that. I mean, I've had other movies that I find just instantly rewatchable each time they're on cable TV. Whether it's something like G.I. Jane or American Gangster, just character pieces. Yeah, just little small just vignettes on stuff about, people who we can only really understand if we're in that lifestyle, but fortunately we have just the little simple moments telling the story for us. I've always kind of been bigger on his filmmaker brother Tony Scott, but I think that's kind of the cool deflection point, where is like, if you want something kind of big, vast, it's a 3-hour epic, go for Ridley. If you want something that's very flashy yet more than just a music video, a very interactive, immersive experience, you go with Tony.
Yeah,
so
Tony Scott, his movies are great too. Yeah, definitely different, definitely lighter.
Exactly. And I went to filmmaking school, and I kid you not, those fucking hacks who call themselves professors were just talking so much shit about all these people they hate, and Tony Scott was one of them. And I really did find that personally offensive, because I was just like, Tony is who I find relatable, who I think many filmmakers and audience members find, I mean, come on, Man on Fire, Crimson Tide, even freaking Top Gun. So it's just, he does all these movies with unstoppable killing machines, with very flawed characters that are just, true romance, for fuck's sake. So it's just, to tell me that he is not a filmmaker because you don't like his style, I'm like, okay, how about just, I don't like his movies? But to say someone is not a filmmaker, that's takes some serious stones to say that. What are you talking about?
No, he made some fantastic. His suicide was quite a tragedy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still haunted by that, because, this wasn't anyone abusing anything. And it's just like, everyone acts like it has to be just depression and everything, and is like, this was a bit of depression, but it was also just, it was a long time coming, and there was no stopping it. And that's the real heartbreaking tragedy of it all. It's just someone who was going to give up eventually, despite, it's like, it had nothing to do with their success, their wonderful career. It was just, I'm feeling very down. And it's like, oh my God. But that is eye-opening, and I wish more people would talk about stuff like that. I just saw a documentary the other night on Showtime about the Comedy Store, and, they were talking about Freddie Prince's suicide. And this movie, I think, is also really good. It approaches depressing material in such a very precious and genuine way. And that's saying a lot. We don't know how robots, die or sweat or feel. So to get that kind of feeling of this out of this world material, and it's not even, makeup or alien related, it's all, in our minds, that's great. So, the Westworld TV show reboot definitely owes a lot to this. Altered Carbon, which has been a very underrated Netflix hit, it definitely feels like a truest of all sequels to it, if you just want to follow everybody in the world.
Yeah. I
And
thought they did a great job with 2049 recapturing the feel of this one.
absolutely. And people give Denis Villeneuve so much grief. I'm like, he did a banged up job because he done all these other psychological thrillers. And I kid you not, I had some friends who claimed they fell asleep during it. And I was like, how can you fall asleep during this one? I mean, there was a lot of stuff happening. So to tell me,
you talking about 2049?
yeah, they were telling me they fell asleep.
But it is a long ass movie, man. Well, how long? I got it right here. How long is this movie?
It's 2.5 hours, but I mean, there's so much frantic stuff happening. I don't fall asleep if there's explosions. I've never even fallen asleep during a movie, unless it was like past 4 in the morning and I was just, up past my bedtime. But I mean, if I'm gonna fall asleep during a movie, it better be because literally nothing is happening. We're just seeing endless scenery and just no plot development of any sort. Just no interaction. But there's so much interaction here in this dark, gruesome world. I mean, we see more of the police force. We see all this other just shady corporations that are intertwined.
And it's filled with incredible performances too. Really, the performances
they take your breath away. Yeah, Anna de Armas, I really have to tip my hat to her because she really makes you feel as the hologram girlfriend of the detective. Yeah. And I mean, I think my sister said it best. To feel for someone who is not human, that's a great performance. And
yeah, that's what Harris. That's what happens to Harrison Ford in the first one.
Yeah, and I just see so many people just giving this movie grief, and it's like, we're gonna have to agree to disagree. I've seen so many other sequels.
Yeah, it's great. I think that's unfair. I think it's great. The only thing with me, because my attention span, this is a movie I'm gonna need to start next time I watch it. I'm gonna need to start it in the middle because I've seen the first half of it probably 5 times, and I think I've made it through the second half once because I just keep falling asleep. Not because it's boring, because I'm 55 and I need my naps.
Yeah.
So I need to start it in the middle and watch the last half of it.
Yeah, you already know the character development now.
I got the beginning memorized. I need to watch the last half. Yeah, I think I'm gonna make that a point to do that. Maybe tonight I'll watch the second half of it because it's the second half's a little foggy to me. But,
that's fine.
And the first one, we need to talk about Rutger Hauer.
Is that very startling to think that whole speech that he says at the end was all improvised? I mean,
yeah, it was supposed to be much more of a fight, like a karate fight or something, like a lot of jumping and kicking, and he didn't want to do it that way. He wanted it more Shakespearean, I think. And so he came up with that soliloquy at the end. And I love this scene. I'm watching the scene right now where they go to the eye manufacturer guy. And while Roy is talking to him, Leon is putting the eyeballs like on his shoulders and on his head. It's
right.
It's a great scene.
And it's also just what I want in a villain. It just everybody else likes to just have these actors just monologue, and it's boring, dude. Because that at the end of the day, it's just going to end with him killing someone off screen or graphically, and it's like that's not entertaining. Just get on with it.
They're toying with this guy. At least Leon is. I don't know.
But like here, it's like he gives it life. Like it feels just so interconnected. You want to know more about this morbid material instead of, it's just a famous person playing a Italian gangster or some shit. No, it's not even that kind of feel. It's just more of I don't know what these guys are going to do. I know I have an idea, but I don't know how and why and where. And so that intriguing mystery really brings it front and center, I think.
And I was looking up in the trivia, the vehicle. I have it written down here. The guy who designed the spinner cars. He was a famous. I say was. He may still be alive. Sid Mead was this famous Hollywood vehicle designer. He designed the bubble cars from Sleeper, Woody Allen's 19.
Yeah.
He designed those, and that gave me a big chuckle because Sleeper is one of my top 5 comedies of all time. So I got a chuckle out of that. He designed those cars too. They designed the spinners, and Blade Runner also designed those bubble cars, which I thought was a riot. obviously on a much lower budget.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, that's a good turning point. This does kind of like RoboCop, which was a big influence for that one.
Yeah. Well,
Even though it's a satire film and it's an action movie, I mean, it also has a rare, intriguing set of emotion. And it's like, whatever happened? It's like throughout the '90s, we were just treated to, don't get me wrong, I'm a direct-to-video B-movie connoisseur, but, what made those movies lesser was there was just no emotion with all the cyborg type stuff, and it's like, why does everything have to be just mindless, head banging bad,
It's funny that you mentioned RoboCop, because Sid Mead, the automobile, he also designed the 6000 SUX from RoboCop, which I found very amusing.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he designed that car too. That's his connection there. Very funny.
Well, and I mean, that also just means so much more because I mean, when it's all said and done, and it's not just the makeup on the actor's face. I love it when you're actually seeing them design the wardrobe, the costume, in addition to the actors doing their usual thing. Here's how I'm going to memorize the dialogue. Here's my backstory that in my head versus what the script indicates. And so to have the prop guys, the costume guys, the set guys all describe what they're going for based on both their notes that they were given and what they had in their head. It's always fascinating. And this is definitely that kind of movie where it shows on screen. The money shows on screen and it's actually going somewhere, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's just the other problem is just we got so many cynical critics. We got unreliable review sites, and we got other audiences who aren't the most experienced with, movies of the past. So when we're having to find a new blockbuster, it's just beyond frustrating because it's like, what the hell? It's just, this is not this hard to please the most general audience. So.
not every. But then maybe it's me being sort of a lazy movie fan. I'm not willing to go down the rabbit holes like, is he a replicant? Is he not a replicant? Does it even really matter? Is it that important?
Well, that's why I avoid most movies that like to do those kind of what if stuff, because most of the time it is just a cop out. It's like, well, we don't even know.
I don't even think it's the movies. I think it's some of the fans that tear into these
well,
movies.
That's just it.
I think the movie makers just like, look, man, it's just a movie.
Well, that's the problem too. They're catering to those people who like to just bitch slap each other, over the head, and it's like, well, whatever happened to just simple entertainment? I liked it.
I'm kind of lazy that way. I just want to be entertained. It's fine.
Yeah.
I personally, like I said, took away that he wasn't a replicant. I don't know people, but what about the Oregon unicorn at the end? Oh my God! I was like, okay,
At this stage, I wonder if Ridley just didn't state it properly. Is like was just talking about Deckard figuratively, just because he has.
So that unicorn could have easily referred to Rachel's character too, that she was, the unattainable fantasy creature, but made out of that foil, sort of artificial.
That's probably Harrison Ford's.
I don't think we even had to refer to Deckard, but I don't go down these rabbit holes as much as some people, so I could be misinformed or I could be missing some points.
Hey, maybe that's what the writer and Harrison Ford prefer when they watch them.
Maybe it was. I think that was him telling Deckard that I know she's a replicant and I'm still going to let her live.
Yeah.
And I love the scene where he's analyzing the photograph and he's able to 3D into the photograph, because at the time that seemed so cool and sci-fi and advanced, but they really have cameras now that can almost do that with taking exposures, taking shots at different focus levels and stuff. They have cameras now that can actually do that to a point where they can actually go into the shot and actually move around it in real time and then extract the shot you want. But I thought that was interesting how we sort of caught up to that. That seemed so futuristic to me at the time. And
exactly, dude. Especially Well, and it's funny you bring it up because you see some of these crime shows that were doing stuff like that, and it's like it wasn't possible back then. It was pissing off all the actual real life crime enforcers. But now you look at what they can do now, and it's like, well, does that really prove it wrong now?
And the other thing, not to go on, the other thing about this film that I find interesting and somewhat depressing are the big giant advertising blimps.
Oh,
that,
yeah.
Like, fly over your apartment building and blast it at all hours of the day and night with light and sound. I don't think we're too far away from that.
Well, there's that, and I mean, not to be derivative too much, but I mean, whenever I'm designing a movie, I pretty much always ask at the board meeting, do the cars fly in this world? Okay, just checking.
Let's get that out of the way up front.
Well, and I mean, this movie, that is part of its identity. You take that scene out, you won't ever remember it the same way. And I really do wish more blockbusters would be that way, where they just have the visual effects spent on creating like just free key scenes, just showing how everyone lives, and the rest of the budget goes to, stunts, makeup, and none of this let's rewrite it for the billionth time bullshit.
No, and Daryl Hannah, she's her scene is on screen right now while I'm watching. Yeah, I remember her. Having quite the crush on her in this film.
It was definitely this. Joanna Cassidy is the one snake gal.
Yeah, Leah, I think was her character's name.
Right. This aired quite frequently when the special edition came out on FX. Then it changed very quickly to Sci-Fi Channel, and again the movie channels, maybe AMC on once in a blue moon. But it was just always interesting to me how just seeing how this movie was just always embraced on. It's definitely one of the few that got reevaluated because it was just so easy to afford on cable TV.
Not Leah, Zora. I'm sorry, her character's name was Zora.
Well, and that Zora is just a beautiful name, and it makes sense when everyone states their name. Is like, of course, it just makes sense just coming from you.
I just loved all four of the replicants, and particularly Brian James, who is creepy in everything he's in.
Always.
Just the hatred that they exude for the humans in this, just the contempt. Just like the evil, what's her name? Was it Liv in 2049? I think her name was Liv. I don't have it in front of me. There's the contempt and just utter hatred and disdain for humans, which I think is supposed to be sort of indicative for us towards God or whatever you believe in as your creator. We have this sort of love-hate relationship with him.
That beautifully said. And
such a great part in this, for this, the absolute just hatred. And then except at the very end when Roy Batty is at his end, he sort of, becomes a little poetic and almost like he wishes he had more time and had more feelings and, could have that side of it too. He holds the dove and almost caresses it.
Yeah. That is definitely another key scene. Is like, take that out, the movie would literally have no soul.
Yeah, that ending definitely gives this movie its punch at the end. Sort of like you almost feel bad at the very end, like, oh wow, these guys are the villains, and all of a sudden now I feel bad.
And it's just preferred as opposed to, you hire two A-listers or rising stars, and either just, one of them just as good at fighting, the other just is a maniac who monologues a lot. And you got so much of that during the late 80s, early 90s, is like, I just would always prefer this formula. This isn't even Star Wars level formula. This is just flat out, here's a villain, you know what he wants. Here's a hero, you know what he wants. And whatever inevitable outcome happens, it's going to be well earned, and it's going to be a gut punch, literally. And you're going to feel all the pain in the room. And that's pretty much missing from every other blockbuster. Like you say, I don't need anything deep either, but at the same time, I also want something that's a little interactive and not just flat out brain dead.
I like both. I like junk food and great restaurant food. I like both. Sometimes I want a Big Mac.
Exactly, and
sometimes I want a really decent steak. And both are fine depending on what frame of mind I'm in. I don't need to poo-poo on the Big Mac. I'll take a Big Mac when I'm hungover, man. Give me a Big Mac.
Right. And I'm also not the kind of guy who bashes a movie if it's going for this, but it's more entertaining in a different light. It's like there's always going to be movies like that. So, I mean, if there's some level of enjoyment in it, that's fine. And so, more or less, if you had to rank this in the world of sci-fi movies, or even mystery and future westerns, where would you rank it, like compared to other genre entries?
Oh, I think it's at the top of the heap. I'd give it a 10 out of 10. Just because how impactful it was, it really set the tone for sci-fi. This and Alien again, Ridley Scott, the darker future, the not so sparkly clean, happy future, but the more I think the more realistic future, the future that we're actually going to find ourselves in. Although this Blade Runner was supposed to happen in November of 2019, so we've already missed it. But I keep wondering when the flying cars are going to show up. But the way people drive, I don't think we need them flying around above us either. They'd be falling down.
Yeah, no, thank you.
But no, I love this movie. I think this movie stands head and shoulders above most. I'm racking my brain to think what other sci-fi movies of that era have had such an impact on me. Nothing. I can't. I mean, I have to go back and look. I can't think of anything. Star Wars, obviously.
Blade Runner is definitely at the top for me. I rank this just with a few different, just very. It's easily up there with all the 70s mad scientists and thought-provoking philosophy sci-fi dramas, and it's definitely up there with many 80s blockbusters. But I know many people say stuff like, some people who like the drive-in circuit will say Trancers, which is totally a knockoff of this, and that's fine. I like that.
Trancers was Tim Thomerson, right? Wasn't that the actor?
Yeah, comedian.
Didn't he start as a stand-up comedian?
Yeah, comedian turned B-movie actor, and
him doing stand-up way back in the day.
Totally.
Yeah, Trancers. That's a forgotten gem. Yeah, there's a lot of those too. Hardware, remember that one?
Hardware is excellent. That's a cyberpunk classic, and much like Blade Runner, ravaged by critics, embraced on home video. So,
where the future wasn't quite what we expected it to be. Very dark, very violent. Hardware's got some good violence in it too. Yeah, some good squishy bits, which is great.
Well, and that's what you also kind of need too for those later entries. And this one, I mean, the violence is brief, but you feel every,
it's real. The one like when Leon shoots the guy who's interviewing him at the very beginning. That's a very impactful scene. Very the way it's filmed, you feel the hit because he goes flying back in that chair and through the wall. It's very very powerful. I thought that.
Back when everyone had to be thrown through a wall.
Yeah, a lot of people got thrown through walls in this one, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, but it was also just kind of a genre signature, is like who can throw so and so out a wall the fastest or first. And a lot of people will even talk about other 80s gems like Back to the Future, and I think because that one was just on cable so much, and much like Ghostbusters, just so overquoted, it never resonated for me as much. It just was kind of memory overload, memory overkill.
Yeah.
And Blade Runner, it just wasn't on TV as much, but whenever I saw it, I was just blown away each time. It just was that special. I could watch it any time of the day. I just saw the imagination on the screen, and it was just a rarity compared to other blockbusters where it's like, well, it's a time killer, but it's not a great movie,
Back to the Future was much more of a cartoon.
Absolutely. It ironically did become a cartoon, and it was just one of those.
Great movie. I love the first one. I love the third one. The second one just confuses the hell out of me. But I thought the third one, set in the Wild West, was a really nifty little twist there.
That's pretty much it. Like the sequels. Well, and that's just it. Like they did what they had to do, but that was also kind of the unfortunate thing. I saw the sequels just way too many times because they were played on TV more often than not, and so got tired of them more. But the first one, it definitely still holds up. But yeah, the third one, it's funny how it's a trend now on the internet. You'll see a lot of people say best Western ever.
What, the third Back to the Future?
Yeah. They'll joke around with it.
If they have their opinions. I kind of like Silverado, and I know like true Western fans would punch me in the head for saying that. But Silverado's fun. Come on, it's fun. Can't we have some? Does every damn movie have to be Rio Bravo? Come on, let's have some fun.
I mean, Silverado is just like what's also missing. If you're gonna do a home as well as be its own thing, that's how you got to do it. You got to do movies like that, and that's another movie which, again, never found its audience, but kind of did at the same time. It didn't make its money, but it did register with the right crowd. And it's kind of like with Blade Runner. It does take a bit to make you realize this is technically a Western too in sci-fi form. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he's tracking down the bad guy, or I guess the gang of bad guys in this.
Right, High Noon.
Yeah, so we got High Noon or Hang 'em High, right? He's sent out to capture these guys.
Exactly. He's gonna wrangle them, if not kill them first. He doesn't need a stagecoach necessarily, although they do kind of take that presence in the second movie. You actually get to see him drive the car, the flying car, and
yeah,
it's a beautiful car. It was great that they showed what happens in the places outside of the city, because they're
just abandoned.
Exactly. Other shows and movies, including stuff like Incorporated, have done a good job of showing, this is where the rich people are, this is where the scavengers are, and it's like, I wish more movies and shows would do that. And it's like, it's just so simple. You don't have to draw a line in the sand even. You just show it. Just 10 seconds of screen time and you're golden.
Yeah, but overall, I love this movie. I can't think of another sci-fi movie from that era that I like more.
It's definitely going to be a predicament.
But for me, it did require more than one viewing. I'm ashamed to admit it. I had to watch it a few times before it all kind of sunk in.
Well, I can't blame you. It's all going to be luck of the draw, depending on what mood everyone's in. So yeah, it's just like, don't watch this if you're not going to be prepared to interact. If you just want lazy viewing.
Yeah, you're not attention. You're not going to shed a thing that's going on.
Exactly. Do watch it if you just literally just want to see just a movie that everyone's talking about, and you can it'll register with you why they're talking about it, because it's just that mind-blowing. So, I mean, I felt like we pretty much covered the bases here. So, yeah, David, thank you ever so much for recording your segment of this.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's an honor, as always.
Always, man. Always.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up